Hello, WiCCD members. My name is Maya Shukairy, and I am WiCCD's Education Committee Director. I'm happy to introduce our series, Finding Your Niche. In this series, we will interview female criminal defense lawyers who practice in a specific area within criminal law. The goal of our series is to highlight the work and accomplishments of female criminal defense lawyers, but it is also a way for us to introduce you to specialty areas within criminal law. We hope we can help you find your niche. Enjoy the series.
Cassandra, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks, Maya.
It's very nice to see you, and thank you for taking the time to do this interview for WiCCD. Let's start, before we get more into your practice, maybe if you can just give us some general information where your practice is based.
Sure. So my practice is in London, Ontario. We service Southwestern Ontario, though. So Sarnia, Windsor, London, Goderich, Stratford, St. Thomas, Woodstock, pretty much anything in the Southwest, south of, I would say, Kitchener and Guelph area.
All right. And how many lawyers are you currently in your firm?
There's 4 lawyers, 2 paralegals. We have an articling student and an accounts manager. And then we also still have some students that during the school year, they'll help us out kind of on a piecemeal basis. And then during the summer, they'll be our summer students or our articling students in the following years.
Nice. And what's the structure of the firm? Is it a partnership? Is it a, like, are you operating as a sole practitioner? Maybe if you can give us more details about that.
So my associate, Katie Heathcote, worked for me for about 4.5 years. And then we decided to partner up. It's not a traditional partnership in that we're not a partnership as defined by the law, but we are certainly a partnership in that we share expenses and then we take home our own profits. In terms of the expenses, we basically share the different staff that are available to us. And we've broken that down in a way that makes sense for us. And then everything else from rent for our office to, whatever else there might be, office supplies, everything else, we share that equally too. So each of us has an associate, and then we share our articling student, for example, we share the accounts manager who helps keep us basically making sure that financially we're sound. And then we each have a paralegal too. So it works out really nicely.
And you are the one who started the firm, right?
That's right. So 2013, I got called to the bar. I worked for someone for about 1 year and 3 months. Learned as much as I could. Got really great experience and got to know the bar and got to know the bench here in London. And decided that I wanted to do it on my own. I thought I was ready, and I certainly didn't know everything, but I knew that whatever I didn't know, I could learn along the way and figure it out, because I knew I was a hard worker and that I'd figure it out. And so I did that. And I started out just going to the jails, getting to know my clients. They would refer me new clients. I was more prominent or more visible than many of my colleagues on social media and on the internet. So one of the things I did, which kind of seems crazy even just 10 years later, one of the things I did was I made sure I had a really great website, which for London lawyers wasn't really such a big deal. And that ended up allowing me to get visibility in London quicker than I think it would have otherwise taken. And yeah, it grew and it grew and it grew. And I think, like I said, I'm a hard worker. So at the end of the day, my hard work paid off and it spoke for itself, right? And clients kept referring me new clients, and I really built my practice on empathy and making sure that my clients feel heard and understood. And, it then came around full circle such that I continued to have people wanting to hire me. And so within 2 years, I was so busy that I needed help. I had a paralegal working with me, and both of us were overrun with work. So I hired my first associate after 2 years. So I was like a 3-year call with an associate. And in retrospect, people probably thought I was biting off more than I could chew, or maybe too big for my britches. But for me, it was just a necessary component of my business. Like I I knew I wanted to continue to provide good service to my clients, and my communication skills were what was setting me apart. And so that became important to me to have help to make sure I could continue that part of my practice and continue those good communication skills.
Okay, so you said that you were called to the bar in 2013, you worked at a firm, and then you started your own practice. But when did you start your own practice? What year was that?
2014.
20. Okay, so just a year, like after a year that you were called to the bar. Okay, so you basically started your own firm very early on in your career. And so I totally relate, because I started defense work right away also, just after my call to the bar. So and that's maybe something that I would like you to talk a bit more about, that, Cassandra, because we're now in a time where a lot of lawyers are actually starting their own practices, but we also hear comments by more senior lawyers that they don't really like that, or they don't think it's a very good thing to do, that lawyers should first work in a firm for a few years and then maybe decide to go on their own. But some lawyers are now starting to start right away on their own. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think as long as you're meeting the basic competencies to practice on your own, then it's a completely viable and legitimate business option and a career choice. What other people think about you and about your business shouldn't impact your decision too much. I mean, certainly there's something to be said about listening to people who've been around for a while and who are trying to give you positive criticism and helpful criticism. But at the end of the day, you are going to know yourself and your abilities better than anybody else. And so sometimes it's just about muting those other voices, including the critics and including the people who aren't necessarily going to be excited for more competition in their area, and deciding what's best for you. And so one of the ways that you can do this while still making sure that you're providing good, competent service to your clients is to make sure you have a mentor lined up. And that doesn't have to be something formal. I mean, it can very much be someone more senior than you, who you just know for a fact is going to pick up your call if you call, or answer your email if you send an email, right? And that's the way that you assure yourself that you're not going to go out, bite off more than you can chew, and then have no one to turn to, right? And in the current climate of everyone working way more virtually, I know that that's a lot harder, but that's where groups like WiCCD are so important. Like, our listserv is so helpful and so collaborative, and it's a community, right? And so not only can you like informally find a mentor there by just simply asking a question, and then someone will answer it for you, or 5 people will answer it for you, and I'll try to help you out. But you might even make some friendships that way too, right? So that's the best way, I think, right now, is through groups like WiCCD, really just making sure that you are well connected, or as connected as you can be.
Okay. And maybe if you can tell us about, did you face any struggles or challenges when you first started your practice?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I remember early days often thinking that I was at a disadvantage because I look young, because I'm female. Maybe people weren't taking me as seriously, but I've always felt pretty confident in who I am, and know what's important to me. And so I was able to, again, mute that excess noise and just do my best and keep my head down, keep doing the work. And it helped me to kind of get past those initial insecurities. And what I've come to realize is that if we deny that sexism occurs in this industry, or if we deny that racism is occurring in this industry, or any other type of discrimination, then we're fooling ourselves, quite frankly. It absolutely exists. It's happening in really quiet ways, and in ways that aren't always obvious to outsiders not experiencing it, but it happens. And so the best thing I've learned, again, is, you want to talk about this idea of community, is, I have a group of people who I know have my back and are there to listen to me, and there to also have me listen to them. Like, it's a two-way street, right? And you just vent and you commiserate, but you also share your victories. And that's how you survive in this industry, when our work is already really hard and our work is already very draining, but then you also have the real issue of we're not even that nice to each other sometimes.
Mhm.
And that's true of our
Each
Crown
other,
colleagues.
you mean more specifically, do you mean like females, or is it?
I'm talking about everybody. Like Crown Counsel can be mean to us, judges can be mean to us, our own defense colleagues can sometimes be mean to us,
Clients?
right? Clients, yeah, like we're getting it from all angles sometimes,
Yeah.
right? So my point is that if you have that community or you have that group of people who you can share experiences with, good and bad, then that's how you survive. That's how you, and not just survive, that's how you thrive, right? That's how you make it in this industry. So I've certainly felt challenges along the way, but the more I grew my community and the more I just reminded myself that, you know, I know what I'm doing and I'm working hard to do it. It's like I've said earlier, the work pays off and the work speaks for itself.
Now, the other challenge that you can also face when you're working on your own, it's finding the right group of people to work with. That's also difficult. It's not easy to build your own team, to find the right associate, to find the right articling student, assistant. So how do you do that? Like, do you have any tips on how you can develop your own team?
Yeah. So by no means do I claim to be an expert here. I mean, I've had successes and I've had failures in my business as I've gone in terms of hiring and having to let people go, having people move on for their own various reasons. It's all part of being a business owner. And so if you're looking to model at all what it is that I've created here, the very first thing you need to know is that it will not be a straight line from A to B. There's going to be many pit stops. There will be times that are very frustrating. There will be times that are really, really great and you're exciting and your business is exciting and it's growing and it's doing fabulous. And then all of a sudden another bump in the road comes along. So number one is you have to be very flexible. You have to be really ready to deal with a whole number of personalities. And most importantly, you need to be prepared to mentor. If you are not prepared to give time of yourself to help teach those underneath you, then you are not meant to be a boss. And that's probably the biggest thing that I ask of my associates or my colleagues, I should say, who are thinking about hiring someone. It's not just about them helping you, you also need to help them. And so that's, I think, the biggest factor of working for me is that when you come to work with me, and I'd like to say with me as opposed to for me, it's this idea of a team. And so what I look for in an associate or a paralegal or anybody who's going to work for me is someone who's a team player who, you know, is ready to have a good time, like a light, breezy office situation happening, but at the same time, like get down to business and like put your head down and do the work when it calls for it, right? And pull your end of the way. I'm mixing metaphors here, but you know what I'm saying. Do your part for the team is what I'm trying to get at. And so when I look for people to hire, I actually don't really read resumes that carefully. I mean, of course, I'm making sure that you have basic competencies, that you've been called to the bar, like those kinds of things. But for me, it's so much more than that. It's about what extracurriculars you're involved in. How did I meet you? And then how do I speak with you? Like, how is our vibe? And so it's that awful saying, are you a good fit? Unfortunately, it's just true. That's just the thing that you look for. Is, are you going to fit in this office? And there's got to be an X factor to you for criminal law. And I know that sounds harsh because it means you either have it or you don't. But I find that there's some people that come into this area of law and they aren't willing to put in the extra little bit of work. They aren't willing to, maybe it's not a willingness, but they just don't have the ability to sympathize or empathize with clients in our side of the equation as easily as I do or some other people in this office do. And that's the kind of thing that can set you apart. It doesn't mean you can't be a good criminal defense lawyer, but to be like a really great criminal defense lawyer, I think that's what starts to set you apart, is when you are able to humanize your clients and see that, you know, this is part of a bigger social picture, that this isn't just them being a bad person. It's so much more than that, right? And it's like I said, it's like this X factor that you either kind of understand this or you don't. And then it's how you apply that to your work too, that it's just something that you, like, I as the boss, I as the mentor can just see. And I know within a few weeks or a few months if the person's got that or not. And so that's, to answer your question, that's what I look for. But then when they actually get into your office, things can be different, right? People can interview really well or have a really impressive CV and really impressive work list of cases that they've worked on, for example. But maybe they don't have the best, underpinnings to how they do their work. Like maybe they're not thorough enough, or maybe they don't follow up on resolution offers fast enough, or maybe they're not great with communication with clients, right? So that's why I started this conversation by saying, like, if you're going to do this work, you need to be prepared to be a mentor, because you need to teach the person how it is that you want them to work your file in a way that aligns with your own values as kind of the head of the business, right? And sometimes it won't work out. Sometimes you aren't going to align, no matter how much you guys got off on the right foot at the beginning. And so you also need to be prepared for that more awkward conversation that comes eventually, which is, are we going to continue to work together, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily because the lawyer is not a good lawyer. It's just that that person is not a good fit for your office. So it's
That's right. And so when I talk about the X factor, like I'm talking more, I guess, about like working in my office and what I think is going to set you apart to work in my office, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't go off and do things a bit differently than me. Like I'm not sitting here claiming that I know it all or that my way is the only good way. Like there's lots of ways to do this work. But for me, that X factor is the empathy and the ability to, really understand our clients and try to meet them at their level and just communicate with them in an open way that makes them feel like they're part of the team too, like they're part of the strategy, right?
right. So, and it's more related to their personality as opposed to how well they are, or like if how their grades were when they were students.
Yeah.
Like it's more.
Yeah. And that's why CVs aren't so important. Like, again, I do need to make sure that you've got basic competencies, but I don't find that good grades always translate into great lawyers, right? Or at least not the kind that I think are successful criminal defense lawyers.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that. Now, Cassandra, you also mentioned a few times the word business when you were talking about your practice, and it is a business, running your own practice. But what I find sometimes is one of the things that scare people from starting their own business or their own practice is this word business, that it is a business. So it sounds like it's a scary word, and that it's something that you have to know, that if you don't know how to do business, then you can't run a practice. But I mean, being a sole practitioner, I know that, like I didn't have any business skills, that I'm doing this. So I think there's some kind of misconception maybe in the criminal law bar about this word business and what it means when you're running a business. So maybe if you can just explain a bit more, like how it is, like, is it really this big business thing, like, when we see on TV, or is it, like just more simple than that when it translates into criminal law?
So I think it really depends on what your goal is, right? So my goal when I first started out was just to practice law, and I needed some help to help me with court appearances here and there and to help me with billing legal aid and whatnot. And so there was two of us, right? That to me is a very viable, very successful business if that's what works for you. And that also keeps it very not scary, right?
Yeah.
You don't have too many salaries to worry about. You don't have too much HR, too many HR type issues to worry about. And you can be in business and have it be very, very simple, very straightforward. It's not as scary as I think we make it out to be in our own heads. I mean, I certainly didn't know enough about the business when I decided to go out on my own, like the business side of it. But I knew I could figure it out, right? And so I hired an accountant, I hired a bookkeeper, I hired people to teach me those parts that I didn't know. And the paralegal who came with me to my business, she had already learned the legal aid side of it. So she was really integral in kind of passing those skills on to me so that I then better understood it. And it was those kinds of mentors that I had outside of law that helped me on the business side. And sometimes you have to pay for that mentorship. And so, getting a loan from the bank, and banks love giving lines of credits to young lawyers because they know that you're probably going to be a successful business because you've got this professional accreditation. And so getting a line of credit or a loan from the bank so that you can then pay for the mentorship that you need to start your business, all very important things. So there's lots of different ways of running a business, and I've done it all the way from the 2-person shop now up to, we're 10 people. And so it's not a massive organization by any means, but for a criminal defense firm, especially outside of Toronto, we're doing all right. And with that comes a lot of extra work. And so when you talk about running a business, 30% of my day now is non-law type stuff, right? And previous to this, under a different model that I had before Katie became a partner, I was doing probably closer to 50% of my day of just mentoring and overviewing the business and making sure all the pieces were working properly. So like I said, it depends on what it is you're looking to do. And if you're looking to be more of a boss and take more of a backseat to the actual running of the files, then sure, what I'm doing might be very exciting to you. Although I don't know that I necessarily only want to do that. Like I'm saying, for me, even I like to work on files still. But if you know that part would drive you nuts and you know that all you want to do is law and lawyering, then my model won't be something great for you, right? Like if you find the interest in your work and the value in your work in the actual law part, then you're going to need to stay smaller so that you can continue to work on the law part, right?
Yeah. And it all boils down to knowing who you are, right? And what you want to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I mean, I don't think I grew into this business. I don't think I had an intention in 2014 of growing into this size of a business. That wasn't really the goal. But what I did know what my goal was to provide really great service to my clients and get good results and, as much as I can be the smartest lawyer in the room, or at least the most prepared, right? And the way that I was able to accomplish that is to make sure that I have the help to support me behind the scenes with the research or the, getting my materials in on time and, making sure my materials are as thorough as possible so that when I'm going to make my arguments, they're well thought out, right? And there's kind of like this sweet spot that you've got to find where either you're going to keep it small and do a lot of that work yourself, or once you get to a certain number of files and you can no longer do all of that yourself, then you need to find the right supports to help you piece it together behind the scenes before they hand it off to you for the final part, right? Mm-hmm. So that's been the growing pains part of my business every year is every time I hire someone, I'm like, okay, now we're going to be good. Now we're going to have enough people to move to make all the parts work properly. And then before I know it, we've got 50 new files more than the last time I thought this. And now I need someone new again, right? So it really...
That's good. That's good.
It's great. It's a good problem to have. But my point is simply it's growing pains at all times, it feels like. I feel like I've been saying this for 8 years now, right? Yeah. So
and there's always new challenges, right? The challenges that you faced in 2014 are not the same ones that you're facing now. Maybe you don't have the same worries that you had back then, but you have new worries and maybe they're bigger ones. But I wanted to ask you though, Cassandra, did you always want to start your own firm? Was that the goal since day one? Or is it something what made you want to decide to start your own firm?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I always had that goal. I very much, I think, in undergrad and law school, assumed that I would be working at a firm, which is kind of funny in retrospect that I ever thought that, because I'm very independent and I like to do things a certain way. And so basically, for me, in retrospect, don't think I would have lasted very long at a firm at all if I had stayed in that life, because I wouldn't have liked having to answer to other people. And that's just, again, me knowing myself now, right? Yeah. It's not to say that that's not a perfectly acceptable and great place to land. Lots of people work in firms and love it, right? They love not having to have the challenges
and only work in. Yeah, and a lot of people just don't even want to work on their own.
Right, because then you do have to consider the business aspect of it, and, all of the other stuff that comes with it. And defense lawyers, as we know, traditionally don't have all of the same benefits that other industries do, like the Crown's office or firms, right? We're trying to change that, of course. But the reality is that there's pros and cons to every type of work, right? So no, I don't think I always wanted to open my own business, but I think pretty quickly it became obvious to me that that's probably the best move for me. And that's what I did.
And no regrets, right?
No, no regrets.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, you're doing super well, and congratulations, because I know that Katie just recently became a partner. So you ladies are doing really well.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
it's very nice to hear about your business model and what you're doing, and it's very inspiring, I find, for especially new female lawyers who are starting in this field, to see that you can start early on with your own firm and have a successful and thriving practice. So thank you so much, Cassandra, for your time and for sharing your experience with us. And best of luck for the future.
Thank you, Maya. And thank you for everything you do for WiCCD. You've been such a bright spot in this organization. And honestly, you do a lot for us. And I know that you're always busy behind the scenes with your own work, but you still manage to find time to do these series and to do so much more for the organization. So good on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's my pleasure. I love doing this. So
I know you do. I know you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra.